having me, and thank you for the boys before me. Very insightful. State aid and partial nationalisation has already proven that it can combat this deindustrialisation it's come for, but it can't eradicate it. We still need progress, we need what's coming next. Obviously, with this government and the Special Measures Bill, we'd have already lost blast furnace technology here in this country, or as we call it, the four queens of iron making. Nationalisation as a form of alternative ownership would allow the state to intervene directly to protect its foundation industries and its people, its present and its future. However, it's not a silver bullet, and it's not the answer to all the challenges in the steel industry, as we all know, because it faces a lot of challenges in and of itself. But in our specific case at Scunthorpe, it showed that the government stepping in and taking a strategic approach can make a real difference. Especially coming off the back of the indifferent approach of an overseas private owner like Ginier, which didn't have the workforce in its heart, really. From a national security point of view, at Scunthorpe, nationalisation would ensure that, full nationalisation, would ensure that the UK maintains a domestic capacity to produce primary steel, which is a critical material for defence, infrastructure and renewable energy projects. Relying on imports from all virgin steel will make the country vulnerable to global supply chain disruptions, geopolitical instability, and put us at the mercy of countries who, quite frankly, have been jealous of us over the years, so they're not going to hold it in the best regard, are they? On the economic stability, one of the boys touched on it earlier about one town being held by one fabric. Scunthorpe is that town and steel is its fabric, and do the people down in Westminster understand that we are intertwined as one? We're not a six industry town. That's the life and soul of it. We obviously it's the cornerstone of the regional economy. It employs thousands directly, hundreds of which are community members and who I know locally, personally. Nationalisation can secure these jobs and prevent the catastrophic and economic social damage that will result in the closure of the Scunthorpe site. But also, nationalisation could provide stability and confidence for the workforce, as it's been a long time since we've had proper guidance and support, and an owner who actually cares about the site as much as locals do. Private owners, driven by short-term profit motives, as Brian just said there, about a Chinese state owning it, that's exactly what we had, and they had no interest whatsoever. They had an exit strategy before they had a long-term strategy. And they have also been unwilling to make strategic long-term investments required for modernisation and decarbonisation, and that's why we're now stuck with where do we go next. A nationalised company, fully nationalised company, such as British Steel, could implement a strategic multi-decade plan, focus on sustainable growth and technological innovation, rather than just shareholder returns. We had our industrial revolution, and when we came out the other side of it, the four queens, and in our opinion, they still are the best in the world. But there's other countries out there, India, and places in the east, like you were saying earlier. They're going to come out the other side of their revolution, and we're going to be even further behind. And that's something we can't accept. The Labour government can't accept that. And as a workforce, we understand that the arcs are coming, the electric movement's coming. We can't completely move away from that. But how do we negate it and make it work for us? We need to make it work here in this country. Can't run away from it, but it's there. If they take full ownership, the government could turn Scunthorpe plant into a flagship project for industrial decarbonisation, and this position then can put us as a leader in green steel and technology and create new skills. I mean, Richard said earlier about keeping people local, and the Chancellor mentioned it in their speech. You don't have to leave to achieve. You put the money in Scunthorpe, people will stay in Scunthorpe, live, work and die in Scunthorpe, and they don't have to go away. And like you were saying, the benefits of being at home more, they don't have to travel for work, they can stay and look after relatives. The knock-on effect in putting things back in the deprived areas will keep people here and keep people moving. Obviously the public interest and social responsibility, the sovereign capability was mentioned earlier by yourself, and the bloke you spoke to must have been a Conservative. He must have been, because to say that the downline stream of Spain, Germany and the other countries building it, that's very much a Tory mindset. We need to do it because they'll do it for us. But we see the value, clearly, speaking here with Vauxhall, Brian and etc., that keeping that economy going locally is essential to life in this country, not just relying on other people giving us it, because we make it better ourselves. But yeah, the asset stripping, we've seen that in industries such as the automotive industry, steel industry, you've seen it, you'll have seen it yourself, and we need to prevent that. You know, the overseas investors don't have our best interest at heart, they don't really care. They can work their own agenda, but we care. So that's, you know, the Labour government needs to protect that. And a fair deal for our community. We were talking about procurement earlier, and the government and the Chancellor have announced obviously that they want to instill these procedures and these legislations that people can't then just dump on us. And the gentleman from Luton was saying that the Chinese dumped all them cars in, and then when they got found out about that, they're finding other ways around it. We need to legislate against that with steel, because if we make it and people buy it, great, but they ain't going to buy it if they can get a cheaper import. They're not going to do it. And the government, I know we're talking about buzzwords and just transition, but I'm going to say it anyway. The government needs to ensure that it is a just transition for the workforce, because if we start bringing in the electrics and we want to build the arcs, if you do it without care and consideration, you will just be essentially moving dirty material around the world. And then you were saying about the environmental impact. What's environmental about that?
Yep.
Making things greener in one country, sailing it around the other side of the world for us to then re-roll it, to then put a different stamp on it. It's not logic, is it? It's just covering ticking boxes. That's all they're doing. But yeah, we don't want to see deindustrialisation of the steel industry, because it's the fabric of Scunthorpe. We saw it in Talbot. Devastating, absolutely devastating. As a union, we did everything we could to limit the damages, but it was already done. When SSI pulled out of Redcar, decimated my family. People up there, they're still recovering from it now, and that was 12 years ago. But no, to close, obviously, greener steel is real, it's out there, but more importantly, greener blast furnace technology is out there. Not just the arts, not just the fancy words and the buzzwords they want to use in Westminster, but our country knows blast furnace operations. You could build the blast furnace there, you could build it in Port, you could build it in Redcar, you could build it wherever you want. Put it in an area where it's going to benefit the country and not the people that are just going to take the shareholders' returns. But for me, I'd like it to come for, obviously. But, you know, thank you for your time, and long live the Queens.